All right, grown-ups, it's just our time. I love the babies, but to help you, I gotta speak my mind. This segment's here to help you grow with book reviews, lessons, and things you'll be glad to know. If your little one's restless or looking to play, send them to my other playlist. The read-alouds there will brighten their day. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Teacher Lady Speaks. I'm Erica M. Burrell, the Teacher Lady, your fairy godparent when it comes to sharing joyful stories and growing young minds. Here on the Teacher Lady Speaks, we use my experience teaching tiny humans to help enhance your experience raising them. We do this through resources, insights, and honest reflection from a well-seasoned educator. Hey, that's me. That gets it and understands just how hard love work can be. The goal of this segment is to be a resource for you and for your family. Because let's face it, there is a lot going on in the world, and sometimes we just need a bit of direction. I hope to be able to help you with that. Now, typically speaking, Monday we have our read alouds on a topic. Wednesday, we have our behind the book reviews on a topic. And Friday, we wrap it all up with the Teacher Lady Speaks, which is why we're here today. There is an exception for this week because it is going to be a two-part, which means Monday this week we had read alouds as well as next week. Wednesday, Friday, all on the same topic. And that topic is immigration and citizenship. I hope you come back for the next week and finish it off. Now, immigration and citizenship, we are discussing from the perspective of the people needing asylum, the people needing safety, the refugees, the people who were displaced. We are looking through the lens of the person who has migrated here. We are not looking through the lens of political and what's needed. We are not looking through the lens of hate. We are not looking through the lens of laws and all of that. So if that's what you are looking for, this ain't it for you. But what we will do on this segment is talk about what it means to become an immigrant, to give a better perspective of their situation, and to help you to explain immigration and citizenship to your children or to your students. Honestly, from a more humane perspective, because all the videos and news and social media things that you're hearing around certain groups of people and them not belonging or laws against them, your baby's here too. So unless you start to combat that with something, unless you start to learn how to speak to them about immigration and citizenship, they can, because they've been exposed to, they have the ability to adopt the lens of hate. And we don't want that. We want to raise kind, loving, compassionate babies who understands their world and who can come up with their own perspectives and viewpoints based on the information presented to them. We're going to go ahead and get to the heart of why we're here today, which is how to raise children who are more sensitive and aware of immigration and citizenship. Also, if your family is one of immigrants, if your child is first generation born here, you just got here, this is also a really good episode for you. Here is how I would explain immigration and citizenship to a young child. I would explain immigration to a young child by saying immigration is coming from one country to another country. What's the name of our country? Yeah, it's the United States of America. That is our home country. That's where we live. That's where we have our citizenship, which I'll explain in a second. But that's where we go to school. That's where we eat. That's where we make friends. That is our home. But there are so many other countries. There's probably hundreds of other countries. And sometimes people have to shuffle, right? Can you tell me the name of another country that's not the United States of America? Yeah, Sudan. Sudan is the name of a country. What's another one? China, yeah, or Spain. So yeah, all these different places, Mexico, all of these different places are countries. And sometimes you're born in one country, but then you go to another one, and you go to another one for multiple reasons. What are some reasons you think you would leave one country that has your language and your food and your family? Why do you think that we would leave there and go somewhere else? Take a second and think about it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Sure. I mean, I love my country so much that in order for me to move somewhere else, I would have to be in danger. Like, it would have to be a situation to where it was no longer safe for us to live here. Or maybe our family is in another country and we really want to go see our family. There's so many different reasons why people will leave one country to go to another. And that process of leaving your home or your country to go to another country is called immigration. It is the process of migrating from one place to another. So, do you know how we used to live in the state of California and now we live in the state of Texas? That process is called migration because we've moved. But if we were to go further, like a whole nother country, that process would be called immigration. So basically, immigration just means to move. It means to move from one country to another. That would be my basic introduction. Then when you get into citizenship, you would say, okay, let's pretend our house is our country. In our house, what are some of our house rules? They might say you have to take off your shoes when you come inside. Yeah, that's a house rule. Absolutely. They might say clean up after yourself, right? Everybody needs to take care of the home by cleaning up after themselves. Yes, absolutely. That is a rule. That's a rule that everybody in this house follows. Similar to how people outside of this house and in our country follow laws. Those house rules are kind of like our house laws. And so when you become a citizen of that country, it means you agree to follow the rules of that country, just like you follow the rules of that house. Now, here's the thing about it. You know how in our house, we would kind of automatically have citizenship because we live here, we were born here, we got this house from grandma, like this is kind of our home. So we didn't have to go through any crazy process to become citizens. We just were citizens. We just lived here. Well, that wouldn't be true if we were to go to somebody else's house. If we were to go to somebody else's house, we would have to go through a process to make sure that we're respecting their house rules or their laws. And we would have to go through a process to be able to fully belong in their home. And that process is called citizenship. Citizenship is your placement within that country. It means that you understand how that country's societal norms work. And if they don't know what societal norms is, you can explain societal norms are things like we hold the door open for each other when we walk through. That's kind of an unwritten rule, but it's a societal norm. So when you come to this country, we all speak the same language. We all follow the same laws and the same rules. We tend to go to similar schools. There are things that are specific to every country. And those processes, right, and you living there is what it means to have citizenship in that place. So what's happening today is there are a lot of people who are coming to our country because they like it, because it feels safer for them, because they have family here, and they are unable to get citizenship. It's kind of like you going over to a neighbor's house because you need help, but you can't get in. And you can't get in because you don't have all the proper paperwork and all the stuff to be able to get in. Okay? That is our process of citizenship. So it's one thing to get to our country. It's another thing to go through the process to be able to stay in our country. Those are two different things. One is immigration, which is the process of getting here. And the second is citizenship, which is the process of legally being able to stay here. Now, this is when we get into why things get tricky. Things get tricky because you would think, well, if they're an immigrant and they want to live in our country, they should just follow the rules. But what happens if the rules are super unfair? Or what happens if they're currently being unsafe and they don't have time to follow the rules? Let me ask you this. If there were a rule that we could only leave our house between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., but 5 p.m., our house catches on fire. Do you think that we would stay in the house, or do you think that we would run and get away? Yeah, absolutely. We would run and get away. The same is true for some immigrants. Some immigrants come over here and they stay in our country without citizenship because their house was on fire. They did not have time to go through the same process as somebody who was chilling in their home and just decided that they wanted to change locations or change scenery. And so when we talk about immigrants, when we talk about citizenship, we should do so from the lens that they might be going through something that we don't quite understand or know. Does it mean that they shouldn't have to go through the process to become citizens? Well, that's up to you. I don't think that that's what that means. But I do think that if you have the ability to help somebody, you should help them. That's how I would explain it. When you are talking about immigration and citizenship, you need to do so from the lens, one, of honesty in terms of definition. Immigrant means to migrate from one country to another. Citizenship means to legally belong to that country. You need to talk about that there is a process to go from an immigrant in another country to being a citizenship in this country, and that's anywhere. Canada has a process. The United States of America has a process. Mexico has a process. Anytime you try to leave your country and go to another country, there is a process. That process of belonging and then becoming official is called citizenship. But when you explain this to children, you need to be very mindful and delicate that there are times that people are immigrants, that they come over here for a different life and a different perspective, and they did not have the resources like money. They didn't have the resources like even being able to speak the language. They didn't have the resources or the luxury of time to be able to go through this very extensive process to be able to legally do so. It doesn't make it right, but what it does make it is human. And that's how you need to go into this conversation about citizenship and immigration. So what could your child be learning in school? As always, I use two states. I use the state of California and I use the state of Texas to break down what your child might be learning in school, because oftentimes parents feel like they learn it in school, they're not worried about it. Now, in California, there is no requirement. We have civil units, but we don't have any explicit requirement for you to teach about immigration or citizenship. Let's head over to the state of Texas and take a look at their curriculum and what it is that they offer on the subject. Texas actually has a required unit. Usually it's the other way around, where California is mandating something and Texas is not. This week, it is flipped. Texas has a required unit in 4th grade so that children can understand the negative social and economic impacts on immigration. In short, what that means is right now in California, there is no mandate. What your child learns about immigration and citizenship depends heavily on the educator, which honestly, even if it did have a mandate, it would be the same. The way children learn is super important to whether or not they actually learn the information you're trying to give to them. So even if there was a curriculum mandate, if the educator cannot get through to that child, they've just gone through this year not picking up the thing that they were supposed to learn. Anything that's important to your family, you're going to have to independently teach. Public schools are extremely important and valuable. They help with the foundation. They help with the basics. If there is something that is super important to you, whether it's culturally, whether it's history based, whether it's social emotional, you're going to have to ensure that you provide that for your child, or find resources, which we have on this video. We have on every Teacher Lady Speaks episode. What was this, girl? I know the answer. Sorry, y'all. It's been a long day. There are resources available in this video, and you're going to have to do independent education to make sure that the thing that you find important, your child is able to know and understand and receive. Best practices at home. The best practices at home would be to normalize immigration. So, unless you are native to this land and to this country, you're probably an immigrant at some point. Maybe not you and your generation, but at some point, if you keep going down that line, your people are from Germany, your people are from Ireland, an unknown country in Africa due to the diaspora, hey, ethnically and historically from somewhere else. and we all landed here. America is known as the melting pot because we have such diverse groups of people. And so when you're talking about best practices in your home, the first is to normalize immigration. Hey, did you know that your great, 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 great grandmother and our family before we got here is actually from Cuba? Yeah, we're Cuban. And we're American citizens now. 4 generations ago, we were born in Little Havana. And so you normalize the process of migrating, right? Another best practice would be to have the discussion if they want to leave one day. Is there anywhere else you would want to explore? What happens when we learn? Immigration isn't always this horrible thing of, I hate my country, or my country is unsafe, and so I just want to come here. Oftentimes, as humans, we are explorers. Actually, Mr. Christopher Columbus was such an explorer, we ended up with this melting pot, okay? Now, it is important to normalize immigrating somewhere else. It is important to speak of immigrants as this way of connection and community, not this way of danger and an off put. Because when you do the danger and the off put, that's when your child goes to school and sees children that speak a different language and gets to the assumptions of why they don't belong. That's when you get into the negative stereotypes. That's when you get into the hate. That's when you get into the entitlement of thinking that you are better than because of where you happen to be born, although you had nothing to do with that. So best practices are definitely to normalize immigration. They're people. I can't even stand the term aliens because people from another country moving here, they're not illegal aliens. They're human beings and they're people. And the best way to go about having those best practice discussions and normalizing that is literature. Throughout these 2 parts, we have books that are featured. One of them is written and illustrated by me, What Would the World Be Without Latinos?, which talks about immigration. It talks about citizenship. And we have The Home We Make, where she speaks about her experience being an immigrant and, quite frankly, not wanting to be. She didn't want to leave. It was unsafe for her, so her family needed to. And so when you have these discussions and you normalize immigrants, you normalize the fact that we're all different, that we all came from somewhere at some point, you will soften their hearts and open their minds